that. It just didn't make a lot of sense that he wouldn't know his girlfriend was not in the room with him and wouldn't assume she probably was in the bathroom. And, you know, I've heard a lot of people speculate that maybe he's an angry person, that she was going to break off the relationship. I don't know if any of that's true. But this whole question of was it foreseeable that whoever was on the other side of the door would be killed, I think the answer is clearly yes.
Now, does he have a chance to get another crack at this, or is this the final time from what you know?
My understanding is it's pretty final. I'm not an appellate specialist, and I certainly don't practice in South Africa, but my understanding is it's fairly final.
Right. Oh, well, so he's looking at, what'd they say, about 20 years?
Well, I think there's a minimum of 15, although my understanding is there are some exceptions to that, and what they are, I'm sure his attorneys will invoke as best they can. But he's looking at a minimum of 15 years. He'll get credit for time served, but it's not a good day for him.
Yeah, and that is a very shaky situation in terms of when the defendant is found innocent, to bring all the families back. There's, you know, besides the defendant, you have his family, you have Reba's family. There's so many families involved. There's so many people. You know, you bring up some good points that this case made so much headways all around the world that could have had something to do with the possible re-verdict, if you will.
Well, I think, you know, some of the criticism I heard were some people thought he cried too much, that, you know, you just can't cry and cry and cry and cry and never stop. Some people questioned demeanor with respect to that issue. I've heard a lot of criticism that a lot of his testimony appeared to be inconsistent. And, you know, it's just, it was such a tragedy, this beautiful, bright, you know, woman with a lot of promise and a wonderful family just cut down in the prime of life under those circumstances. And as I said, I think it kind of stretched the imagination to think that he wouldn't believe she was somewhere in the bathroom, because apparently, you know, she obviously had left his bedside, and my understanding, based on some of the testimony, is it would have been very unrealistic to think that he thought she was still in his room or in his bed when he acted the way he did. But then again, I wasn't there either. But clearly, the Court of Appeals in South Africa just felt that fired this gun knowing somebody was likely to die, and unfortunately she did, and he's now a convicted murderer.
We'll see where it goes. Okay, the next story is Jared Foggle with the sentencing. Here's some sound, and we'll talk on the
breaking today, 15 and a half years. That's how long former Subway spokesman Jared Foggle will spend in prison. We brought the judge's decision to you live here on RTV6 and on the RTV6 app. Call 6 Investigates. Rafael Sanchez has been following this case since the very beginning, and he joins us live with today's developments.
Hey, Candace, good afternoon. Right now, Jared Foggle on his way to a federal facility. He spent 6 hours in the building behind me. This is the federal courthouse in downtown Indianapolis. He left that block a federal inmate. Despite his tears and his 6-minute speech, Jared Foggle got more prison time than the government had requested. Instead of 12 and a half years, as the U.S. government wanted, Foggle is looking at more than 15 years in federal prison. Foggle accused of child pornography and having sex with minors. He told the court that he took full responsibility for his actions. He said his life spiraled out of control and he became dependent on alcohol and pornography.
Jared Foggle's defense team came in and asked for a 5-year prison sentence. We argued strongly against it. We thought the facts and law justified a much harsher sentence. And ultimately, the judge agreed with us and imposed a sentence of 15 years, 8 months.
His lawyer requested that Foggle be allowed to serve time at a federal prison in Colorado where he can get help for his problems. Foggle, who walked into the federal courthouse this morning behind me, did not walk out. He is now in federal custody. In asking for mercy from the court, Fogel's lawyers told the judge that they believe that it was his weight loss, that massive weight loss that he experienced while being a student at IU that led to his sex addiction. The court did not buy that argument. Candace?
Now, Raphael, you were inside as everything happened today. What was it like?
It was very tense, it was very emotional, and overall, Candace, it was very graphic. After all, we were talking about 16 young people who were victimized by Jared Foggle, who was now convicted and who's now been sentenced. And so to hear those details again was just troubling and just unimaginable, if not only for the press, but for the families and the friends who had to sit through that and listen to all that graphic detail.
Raphael, thanks so much.
Tom Mesereau, what do you make of the sentence that he's getting at Jared Foggle overall?
I think he's very lucky. I'll tell you, if he were in California State Court, he could be looking at hundreds of years in prison based on the information I've been given. And
really?
You know, he was in the federal system. They appear to have treated him much better than our state courts would have. You know, a lot of state courts would have really thrown the book at this guy with that many reported victims. I think he's lucky. He's going to do probably 86% of that sentence, because that's pretty much what you do under the federal system. And he's lucky he wasn't in California State Court. That's all I can. Certainly getting life in prison in many states, including California.
Yeah, I mean, there were 16 alleged victims. I know he did have to pay out money to them. Was that a factor, you think? Or is that just the area that he's in?
You mean as part of his sentence, he had to pay monetary restitution? Is that what you're saying?
Exactly.
Yeah, well, that's part of a federal sentence. Restitution is often an ingredient in a sentence, depending on what the judge thinks you owe the reported victims. But I just am amazed that with this many victims, that he received only 15 years. I mean, he's very lucky, because more and more states all across America are toughening up the laws that deal with child molestation, sexual abuse, sexual assault, lewd conduct in front of children, that kind of thing. And many in California, he would spend the rest of his life in prison without question.
Yeah. A lot of lawyers, a lot of legal analysts said that his lawyers, or whatever the case may be, he got a very good break, because he's only 39 years old, 40 years old, something like that. And you know, suppose he gets out by 53, 54, he still has you know, the bulk of his life to live.
He's very fortunate, I'll tell you. I'm actually quite surprised that he was treated that well with that many reported victims.
And what did you think of that weight loss excuse, which is really an odd excuse?
Well, you know, I think his defense attorneys had a very tough case. I think they were ethically and professionally obligated to give him the best defense they could. He was affected psychologically and emotionally by whatever he was taking to lose weight. That's possible. Ultimately, I don't think the judge really bought it. But nevertheless, his lawyers were ethically and professionally obligated to defend it vigorously, and it sounds to me like that's what they did. They put all the facts on the table as best they could and put him in the best light they could. That's their obligation, to make the system work, as I said before. So I commend them for putting all those facts on the table. Anything they could think of that might assist their client in getting justice, I think, was their obligation to do.
No question. All right, I want to talk to you about Charlie Sheen, but let's take a listen to Charlie on the Today Show as he speaks with Mr. Matt Lauer.
I'm here to admit that I am, in fact, HIV positive.
This morning, Charlie Sheen speaking out.
When were you diagnosed? Roughly 4 years ago.
Once considered Hollywood's baddest bad boy, Sheen had a penchant for promiscuity and partying.
What's not to love? When you see how I party, man, it was epic. The run I was on made Sinatra, Flynn, Jagger, Richards, all of them just look like, you know, droopy-eyed, armless children.
Last month, the National Enquirer posted a story saying that an unnamed Hollywood superstar was HIV positive. At the time, it did not reveal Charlie Sheen's name, but now the tabloid is doing that and then some, with details from their year-and-a-half investigation and what they're calling a multi-million-dollar cover-up that will rock Tinseltown. And now the National Enquirer's bombshell report that Sheen's been diagnosed as HIV positive.
What I can tell you is that multiple ex-partners of Charlie Sheen came forward via text messages and in one case a video recording in which they all confirmed that they were exposed to HIV, and they spoke of their horror at potentially being infected with this virus.
All my hooker numbers are in that phone.
Sheen, who was at one time the highest paid actor on TV, earning close to $2 million an episode on the hit show 2.5 Men, once estimated he'd slept with 5,000 people. In 1995, he admitted to spending tens of thousands of dollars on prostitutes. And in a 2011 interview with ABC News, he talked openly about why he enjoyed the company of prostitutes and porn stars.
They're the best at what they do, and I'm the best at what I do, and together it's like, it's on. Sorry, Middle America. Well, he's not lying to people. I think whatever you do and there's no children involved, then you're okay.
According to the National Enquirer, Sheen has known about the diagnosis for several years. And the tabloid also says the actor, reportedly worth $125 million, has faced a number of lawsuits and paid millions to protect his secret.
Many of those women have sought legal counsel and successfully sought settlements with Charlie Sheen as a result of their exposure.
A source close to the situation tells ABC News that his ex-wife, actress Denise Richards, does not have HIV and neither do their children, adding that he was infected at some point after their divorce in 2006. Sheen has 3 ex-wives and 5 children. In that NBC News interview, Sheen also says that he does not think he exposed any of his partners to the virus. The Enquirer's full article comes out tomorrow, and it's important to note that while HIV is hardly a death sentence these days, legally you are required to tell your partners if you know that you have HIV. Yeah.
Tom, Mesereau, what's your take on the Charlie Sheen situation with HIV, and how does it come about with the law in terms of you have to tell people? Do you know about that?
Well, you know, to me, this is a great tragedy. You know, I just think it's a very sad chapter. Here was a tremendously gifted performer, a gifted actor. Everyone said he was gifted. The highest paid actor on television, making over $1 million an episode. You know, he had an enormous capacity to do good, to influence kids, to influence people in a positive, constructive way. And unfortunately, he self-destructed. And, you know, the older I get in this world and the more I live, the more I realize just fame and money can be either an all or nothing proposition. Fame or money can be the greatest blessing if one knows how to handle it, how to control it, and use it for good. And it can also be, fame and money can be the greatest curse and just destroy people. And unfortunately, I think he just got so carried away with drug use and partying and wild sex that he just lost focus and lost perspective and ended up, in my opinion, a tragedy. You know, I never got the impression he was an evil person, that he was out to hurt people. I never got that impression. But unfortunately, this, you know, great reputation he had as an actor, as a performer, the wealth he accumulated, which he could have used to do a lot of good in the world, may all be slipping away, because if he had sex with that many people, you can imagine there are going to be thousands of lawsuits filed against him in civil court. I don't see him ever being charged with a crime, although it can be a felony in California to infect someone with HIV intentionally and consciously and try to harm them. That is a felony in California, but I think the greater likelihood is that people will file civil suits claiming that he inflicted emotional distress on them, telling them by scaring the daylights out of them, by, you know, worrying their families, worrying themselves, they're having to get treatment of various sorts, and I think he may actually lose his entire fortune.
Really? You think that's a possibility?
Well, I